The Age of Religious Wars. The French Wars of Religion. Part 4. When Charles died in 1574, he was succeeded by his even more neurotic brother, Henry III. The new king was quickly hated for the money and affection he lavished on his minions, effeminate court dandies, to say nothing of the degenerate royal ballets and masquerades in which the king usually dressed as a woman. This was coupled with sudden spasms of great religiosity, during which he would become briefly a hermit or practice self-mortification. Under this last Valois king, the Catholic-Huguenot conflict reached its climax. Ultra-Catholics and Huguenots alike saw Henry as a lying hypocrite, but one that was easily swayed. The Huguenots still held important western towns and virtually controlled the south of France, where areas like the Languedoc had become virtually independent. The Ultra-Catholics formed a Holy League in 1576 and vowed to exterminate heresy and to seat a Catholic champion such as Henry, Duke of Guise, on the French throne. Leaders of both religions preached rebellion. Both sides had strong commanders. For the Holy League, Henry of Guise was a perfect bandit captain, brave, arrogant, with a saber scar etched across his cheek. But the Huguenots could boast their heir apparent to the throne, Prince Henry of Navarre, who quickly renounced his forced St. Bartholomew conversion. Henry of Navarre was an easygoing extrovert with one priceless virtue. He was the only French political leader who tried to do what was best for France and not his own interests. The turning point in this French crisis came in 1588 and 89 with the War of the Three Henrys, Guise versus Valois versus Bourbon. The conflict began when Henry, Duke of Guise, made his supreme bid to capture the monarchy. He had to move carefully, for he was in the pay of Philip II, who had a like claim of his own to the French throne, his third wife being Elizabeth of Valois. In 1588, Philip directed Guise to stage a revolt in Paris to prevent Henry III from possibly interfering with the Spanish invasion of England. Accordingly, Guise entered Paris against Henry III's orders, and the Guise incited the Parisian mobs to disarm the king's guards and besiege him inside the Louvre Palace. Before Guise could summon the nerve to assault the Louvre and kill the king, Henry III had slipped out and escaped. Nevertheless, Guise now had virtual control. He forced Henry III to make him chief minister. He dictated policy and managed the Estates General. The only trouble was that by this time, Guise's patron, Philip II, had just been shocked by the English and was unable to protect his French agent. Henry III plotted to murder Guise, which Guise severely underestimated. On December 23, 1588, the king's bodyguard closed in on Guise and stabbed him several times. Henry III, realizing the Guise response, now joined the Huguenots in an all-out effort to crush the Holy League. He threw himself into an alliance with Henry of Navarre, who he recognized as his rightful heir, and the two men marched together against Catholic Paris. But retribution for Guise's murder came fast. In July of 1589, Henry was himself assassinated by a fanatical monk. This left Henry of Navarre, who was unofficially crowned King Henry IV. But the question remained, was Catholic France ready for a Huguenot leader? The new king's strongest asset was the mounting hatred against anarchy. Many Frenchmen, called by their detractors politiques, because they preferred merely political goals to spiritual ones, had long craved for peace and stability. The essayist Michael de Montaigne was disgusted with cannibalism in the name of divinity. So was political theorist Jean Bodin, who pleaded for the establishment of centralized authority in the hands of a purposeful prince. In Henry IV, the politiques saw at last a French prince who could be trusted with sovereign authority, who was a statesman of humanity and honesty. Still, it took Henry IV a full decade to retake Paris and end the war, due to the constraint maneuvers of Philip II. The Parisians continued to believe their Holy League priests, who taught that a good Catholic would eat his own children rather than submit to a heretic. In 1593, Henry concluded that he must undergo the humiliation of conversion once again to Catholicism. stating, quote, "Paris is well worth the Mass," end quote. In 1598, Henry IV and Philip II finally made peace. In the same year, Henry IV issued the Edict of Nantes. With this edict, Henry established a lasting religious truce. He declared Catholicism the official French religion and prohibited the Reformed worship within 5 leagues, or about 17.5 miles, from the city of Paris. The Huguenot residents of some 200 towns, mostly in the south, were granted full religious freedom. About half of these towns were fortified and garrisoned by the Huguenots at royal expense. Plus, Huguenots throughout the country were granted full civil rights and eligibility for public office. The close of the French religious wars with the Edict of Nantes was to some extent a Catholic victory. France was henceforth a Catholic country with a Catholic king, yet Henry IV temporarily expelled the Jesuits and denied the fanaticism of the ultra-Catholic Holy League. At the same time, the edict could also be seen as a Protestant victory, since it granted the Huguenots an entrenched position in the south of France. In most ways, the Edict of Nantes signaled the triumph of political ideals over religious ones.